Good morning and welcome everyone to this webinar. My name is Christelle Tassios and I will be your moderator today. So let's wait 1 minute for everyone to join. But while you are waiting, some operational informations quickly. Your cameras and microphones are off on purpose, but don't worry, we want something quite interactive. So if you have any questions or comments, please use the comment box and we will address them at the end of this webinar. Also, by using the raise hand button, you might have your microphone turned on at the end of the session if you want to ask one question. So I think we can start. So today's theme is around blockchain, AI, the advantages and the limitations. So we really try to mix between the theory but also to give you some concrete examples so you understand really what is going on and in your daily life with real cases. So before I introduce our dear panelists, a few words on My Swiss Keeper, which is proudly sponsoring this webinar today. So My Swiss Keeper is a higher secure digital vault designed to securely store and protect sensitive data for anyone. We are based in Lausanne. We are a Swiss company under Swiss law with Swiss technology. If you want to get more information about us, do not hesitate to connect to www.myswisskeeper.com or to log in and to follow us on LinkedIn and follow our page. So let's talk now about our dear panelists, and I'm very happy to have you on board. Very different background. So ladies first, so we have Leila Delarive, CEO at Amplify. Amplify is a complete ad management solution for businesses, offering a suite of artificial intelligence tools to create, deliver, and optimize your ads. Unfortunately, Leila is not with us today physically, but she has a little surprise for you, so stay tuned. But we are lucky to have Romain Roset, CTO at Amplify, one of Leila's team members, to talk us through a very Swiss and innovative project fully based on AI with the support of InnoSwiss. So hello, Romain.
Hi.
Hey, then we have Philip Fischer, founding partner at Oberson Abels, a leading tax law firm here in Switzerland. So Philip is an expert in international finance and business law. He is also serving the legal community as vice president of the Harvard Law School Association of Europe and a member of the Geneva Bar Exam Commission. So very happy to have you, Philip. Then we have Linus Gasser, cryptography and blockchain expert at the EPFL Center for Digital Trust here in Lausanne. Linus started his career on the foundation of cryptography. He is involved both in systems and application, but his true passion is teaching. So we have very lucky students at the EPFL today. So welcome, Linus. And then we were supposed to have Frédéric Sans with us, trust administration and wealth management expert. However, because of unexpected events, Frédéric is not able to make it today, so he deeply apologizes. But don't worry, we found some cover-up to get all the concrete examples you need. So with no further ado, I think we need to start. And the theme number one is the intersection of blockchain, AI, and data management. So we see blockchain, we see AI, so lots of different concepts, and we see them more or less every day. And maybe I will ask Linus if you can help us on this one to give us a quick overview on AI and blockchain to make sure our guests here on the webinar feel very comfortable on the subject. So Linus, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you very much, Christelle, for the introduction. Yeah, it's a pleasure to me to introduce subjects. I mean, doing a subject in one slide is always a challenge. So I tried really to reduce it to the most important parts. So when I think about blockchain, I always think about what it is supposed to replace. So if you look at the left side part of this slide, you see that most of the web services you go to, might it be a news website, might it be some chat, might it be something else, it's always based on something like a database. So you have some data that is stored in a server that is accessible. You have some kind of program logic which says, okay, this person is allowed to post new things, this person is allowed to read these things. And then you have what is called an API, so an interface for the clients, for the persons with their web browsers then to interact with the program logic and with the database. So this is something which is very high performance. This is why most of the web services uses that. There is one big disadvantage with that setup, which is you need to trust the owner. So let's say you have any application like social media, and you have the owner who decides that his messages are more important than all the others. He might just push his messages to all the users. Completely, completely surreal exercise, of course, because nobody in his sane mind would do that. But you can imagine that it is possible that the owner just decides what he wants to do. The owner can delete data, the owner can modify data. So this setup is very high performance, but you need to trust the owner. And in some cases, we don't want to trust the owner. In some cases, we want to be, we want to give away some of the performance to actually trust a majority. So if you look at the right-hand side, you have now, instead of having one single database, you have all these different nodes which are communicating together. This allows the clients also to interact with the nodes. There is not a single database, but there is what I call the virtual database. It's in fact a database which is made out of the information from all the nodes. And now this system has unfortunately lower performance than the left-hand system, but you can trust the majority. So as long as the majority of these nodes follow the protocol, as long as the majority of these nodes actually do what they're supposed to do, the system will work out nicely. If somebody wants to cheat, they need to convince the majority of the nodes to cheat. It's not enough for one node to say, okay, I do something different. Half of the nodes need to do something different for the system to actually go in another way. If you go to the next slide, Christelle, can I switch to the next? Thank you very much. This has now also some legal implications of blockchains. So first of all, when blockchains came out, it was with Satoshi Nakamoto who explained how to do this decentralized payment system called Bitcoin. His biggest thing was to get rid of central banks. So he was very angry at central banks. He said central banks, they can control your money and you should not be able to, you should have your money without control. So he wanted to be free of regulations. Reality shows that it's not that easy. So free of regulations is nice, but if a country attacks another country and then you want to make repercussions on this country, you need some regulations. And if you look at how the money was handled in the last 200-300 years, it also started that everybody was allowed to do whatever they wanted, and little by little there were more and more rules how you are allowed to send money, how you are allowed to receive money, and most of the rules I think are really for good of the people. And blockchains nowadays they try to say it's all bad, we need to have no rules at all, which I'm not sure is really the best way to think. Another thing from legal point of view is who is responsible if something illegal happens on the blockchain? So is it the owner of the nodes who can be held accountable? Is it the authors who write the code for the nodes? Um, how does that work? And this is something that from a legal point of view is still not really solved. There are some judgments out there, there are some cases, but this is not really clear yet. If you go to the next slide. Same exercise, AI in one slide. So on the left-hand side, I put what is called the training, and on the right-hand side, I put what is called the usage of the model, so inference in AI speak. AI models exist for a long time already, so they are more than 30, 40 years old, but it's only in the last couple of years where AI model really could be used by everybody. The training of the AI model is always about having as much data as possible. And there we already have a first question from a legal point of view, which data am I allowed to use for my training? So the data might be privacy, might be private data, the data might be under copyright, the data might be licensed in a way I'm not allowed to use it. What data am I allowed to use? That's the first question for legal people. Then with this data, you do this training, and to get good training, you need more data. The more data you have, the better you can train your model, the better you can then output good results. On the right-hand side, then, we do the inference, which means using the model. So you give now new data. Let's say in the first part in the training, we take the whole internet and we train these large language models on the whole internet. And then on the right-hand side, I can ask a question like, explain to me how blockchain works. So this is a new question. And then the model will try to answer this question by just predicting how it should answer this thing. And this right-hand side uses much less, uses much less energy than the left-hand side. So this is very simplified model for AI, but this is for the general AI. So you can AI which just do statistics, saying, okay, this email is spam or not. And you can have all these AIs who do text, so there's large language models, who do audio, images, and now more and more you also have AI models who can actually do video. But it's always the same. You always need to train. But the question is, where does the data come from? Am I allowed to use this data or not? And then once you have the trained model, you can use inference to create new data. And then the question is this new data, does this follow the law? Is it something which is not allowed by law? And how do I treat that? So these are a bit the AI in one slide.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Linus. If we go to the next part of this theme, how we can transpose this concept into real life, and I'm thinking a lot about the legal world. So, Philippe, can you say a few words on this one, please?
Yes, sure, absolutely. And thank you very much also for the invitation. And I'm also very much looking forward to take part in this seminar. And of course, the presentation we just had by Linus was absolutely fascinating. And it's difficult to speak after this kind of presentation because I have to go back, I would say, to some boring legal stuff, which is, of course, less fascinating than what Linus just explained to us. But nevertheless, to the extent it's my job, I will try to show a little bit the main, I would say, legal and regulatory implications which I see today when I'm working with some of my clients on projects implying the use of blockchain or of AI, or more generally also cloud-based solutions. And I think as a business enterprise, and that's what you have in the center of the triangle, you're basically exposed, I would say, to three different pressures which draw you into different directions and which, of course, you have to handle and you have to arbitrate between one and the other. First, of course, you have a certain progress in technology. And that has been illustrated by the presentation made by Linus, but of course, we can feel that on an everyday basis. You have a reliance increasingly on cloud-based technology, sometimes even only on cloud-based technology because the corresponding services which were offered on-premise are being phased out. And of course, for the last, I would say, 12 months, you have a very high emergence of AI-based services. And at the same time, I think the business models of a lot of service providers are also changing a bit. On the one hand side, you have certain, I would say, positive developments by so-called follow the sun service models, where basically the service is being provided at every point in time during the day, 24/7, which is, of course, a good thing from an operational standpoint, but also implies, of course, that there are service providers in a number of different jurisdictions which can have access to the data. Typically, during the night here in Europe, it will be service providers located elsewhere in Asia, for example. And you have the emergence more and more of the so-called pay or okay service model. Pay or okay service model is typically what a lot of platforms, social media platforms are implementing, where basically either you pay for the service, or you agree that your personal data is being processed quite heavily by the service provider. In fact, it should rather say pay in cash or pay in personal data. That would be more correct, but the way it is generally referred to today is the pay or okay. Okay meaning okay to process my personal data. That's on the one hand, I think, the progress in technology and in the business models. Then you have number B, which is the expectations of the data subject. And by data subjects, I mean those whose personal data is being processed. And there, of course, first and foremost, you think about your clients, which is quite obvious, I think, for a lot of businesses. But obviously, you need to think about your employees, which are probably as important as your clients, and in certain circumstances, also about the third parties. And that's not a legal point, but more, I would say, a practical or empirical observation. You realize that these data subjects have extremely high expectations from the business enterprises, and they are really unhappy in the event, for example, of a data breach, which has, of course, then a very high reputational impact on the business enterprise, while at the same time, all of these data subjects, and I include myself in there, we, of course, very happily use data-intensive services such as LinkedIn, Instagram, and Facebook, but where we don't care that much, in fact, and we are more on the okay and not on the pay side of the pay or okay. But at the same time, we want that our bank, our insurance company, our telecom service provider, etc., is extremely careful with handling the data. And of course, the risk of a data breach increases each time you have other people involved in the chain of services, which is typically the case on a cloud-based technology, which at the end of the day, there is this famous expression, there is no cloud, it is just someone else's computer, which I think is quite right. I mean, there is no cloud, it is just someone else's computer, but by the mere fact that it is someone else's computer, it also shows that the company loses, to a certain extent, control over the data of its client, and therefore also somehow increases the risk of a data leak. And then the last element, which of this triangle to which the business enterprises are confronted, is the increasing regulatory pressure. We know, of course, that we have data protection rules in the EU since 2018, in Switzerland since 2023, where you have a strong emphasis, of course, on data security. Some people even say that the only purpose of GDPR in the EU was to force companies to adopt a high level of hygiene in terms of data security. Then you have the recognition that at the end of the day, it's not only about personal data, but that data overall is key for a business enterprise. Sometimes it is said data is the new oil. And because data is the new oil, you need to be careful with your oil. And therefore, there are other rules, primarily in the financial industry, such as the DORA, which is an EU regulation, and we have similar regulations in Switzerland. And we have, speaking about AI, I think nowadays, of course, it's impossible to do any kind of seminar without at some point speaking about AI, which we do. And there, of course, you know that with a lot of fanfare, there was the adoption of the EU AI Act in the EU a couple of weeks ago, which will fully enter into force in 2 years' time, which, by the way, is quite ironic because in reality, of course, when you think about what the world was 2 years ago, I'm not sure a lot of us was using ChatGPT 2 years ago. Now I think a lot of us are. So you can imagine the pace of change. And once the EU AI Act enters into force in 2 years, probably the AI environment will look very different from today's environment, but the rules are the rules of today. Let's see how this will happen. But overall, I think we see that there's increasing regulatory pressure. There was always also kind of a grace period for a number of years which were given by the authorities, but now we see extremely strong enforcement action by the authorities, which also needs to be taken into account by the business enterprise. And so I think our job, and I see my job as advisor, but I think every manager of a business enterprise should try to find the right middle ground between the three competing interests, which all draw in a different direction. It is not impossible, of course, but of course, part of our seminar today is also to try to explore where basically there is kind of a sweet spot which allows you to somehow reconcile as much as possible these three requirements, or at least two out of these three requirements to the extent possible. What I wanted to say so far, and of course, I'm happy to exchange further in the Q&A phase.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Philippe. I don't know if you want to say something on this one.
I mean, very briefly, but this was really more for a reference for the participants. It is something we have developed at my firm because we are very much involved in helping business enterprises implementing cloud-based projects, and therefore we have this little do and don'ts, which I think might be helpful for some of you who are considering these kind of projects.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Philippe, for your interventions. So before we go to the next little surprise we have for you, don't forget, if you have any questions or if you want to comment, if you want to ask anything to our panelists, we will keep like 10 to 5 minutes. It depends at the end of this webinar for your questions and comments. So we want something quite interactive today. So do not hesitate to do that. Are we good on the technical parts? So for the next one, so Leila is not with us today physically, and again, she apologized as well, but she wanted to share her vision with you on the key challenges and in sensitive data management. So let's hear what she has to say.
Hi, everyone. Let me now address the key challenges in sensitive data management. So we are in this increasingly digital world. Managing sensitive data securely has become a critical concern for all organizations. Whether it's personal information, financial records, proprietary data, the stakes are high. And today, I'd like to briefly highlight the key challenges we face in sensitive data management and discuss some strategies to address them. So, growing volume and complexity data. The vast amount of data that we generate has really exploded. You have digital devices or different systems, and whether you're a small or large organization, you do produce data. So one of the key challenges is to effectively categorize and protect those sensitive information. Just implement scalable data management systems and use advanced analytics to identify and prioritize sensitive data. We also have this very complex regulatory framework. So regulatory compliance is a must. You have to keep up with various data protection laws. GDPR is one of them, but you also have industry-focused regulations. And so therefore you have to develop a comprehensive compliance strategy and stay updated with regulatory changes through regular audits and assessments. Cybersecurity threats is another major challenge, and we know they are more and more sophisticated, those threats. So the risks have increased, and data breaches or unauthorized access are really a problem that we're facing on a day-to-day basis. You need to employ robust security systems, cybersecurity systems like encryption, firewalls, and also regularly conduct employee training because they are absolutely key into recognizing potential threats. Access control and authentication. For instance, we have a very strict policy on who can access data, and you can manage in reality who has access to sensitive data, because it is really important and crucial to prevent unauthorized exposure. So utilize role-based access control, multi-factor authentication to ensure that authorized personnel can access those sensitive information, and not everybody can access those sensitive information. So while managing sensitive data presents significantly challenges, you can understand these issues, and the first step is really to address them. having like a clear vision of where the threats comes and how to mitigate or make sure that those threats never become a data breach. So you have to implement proactively robust strategies that can safeguard your data. You have to maintain also, when you have a robust strategy, you can maintain your customer trust and also, comply with those regulatory requirements. So I would say my key takeaways today would say to stay informed, keep updated with the latest regulations and technological developments, invest in security, allocate resources to strong cybersecurity measures and employee training, and also implement strong governance, establish clear policies and procedures for data management. Make sure also that the people with whom you're going to collaborate, your vendors, do also have a strict compliance, regulatory compliance, cybersecurity policy, so that you will not be impacted by any breach coming from them. Thank you for your attention, and I know that it's hard to navigate the complexities of sensitive data management, but there are tools, there are software as a service, there are solutions to really mitigate those threats.
Perfect. Thank you, Leila, even if you're not here. So that brings us to the second part of our webinar, blockchain for secure data management. So, okay, so we know that the blockchain exists, but really what are the benefits and the challenges? So we'll start by Linus, and then we'll talk about more concrete examples. So Linus.
Okay, I wanted to start with the next slide and then come to this one here, please. Thank you very much. Yes, so very quickly, as you saw, and as Leila also said, the blockchains, they can help in something which called the access control. So I call it here on this slide the advanced access control, which means who has the right to access documents. So, for example, we made a proof of concept with a tool where you could say, well, this person has access on this time, only on these documents, given that he does not also want to access other documents. So you can do quite complex things. And all these things that you can do with blockchains are usually put into something which is called a smart contract. So a smart contract is nothing else than a small piece of code which runs on the blockchain. And as I said, the blockchain is not just a centralized thing where somebody can change. It is a decentralized thing where you have many different players, many different nodes who all run this smart contract. And this brings us to one of the problems also from a legal point of view is what happens if this smart contract is badly written? What happens if this smart contract has a backdoor which allows me to access documents even though I should not? And this is a big problem which is not yet solved really. And for this case, so if you go back to the previous slide, please. So for this case, a lot of people, they do, so if you look at the right-hand side, they do what is called private blockchain. So they take a blockchain and they hide it behind a computer network. And in the end, they don't really do anything else than having a database and having some programming logic and then some access control on this thing. And this is not really the best case of a blockchain. If you really want to have the best advantages of a blockchain, you need to have it public. You need to have it in a way that different of these nodes are held by different people so that you don't put all your eggs in one basket. I mean, if you need half of the people to do something different from the blockchain, if you need half of the nodes to change the way the blockchain should work, if all the nodes are held by the same person, well, the same person is again in control of everything. So this is why I always say, well, blockchain should be public. Blockchain should be shared among many different stakeholders so that you need really 50% of the stakeholders to do something to do something illegal to divert from the protocol, as we say in the technical part. And just to end on the third slide, some limitations, I believe Michael will also talk shortly about it. So we talked already a little bit little bit about regulations. So the blockchain, they're the new kids on the block, even now after 10 years, 12 years. They want to do everything new, they want to do revolution, but we have known procedures, we have regulations in place, so we need to follow these things. Um, from a legal point of view, there are some problems sometimes with blockchains. I don't want to go into details, but just to say again, the security with regard to smart contracts is still a very difficult problem to solve. So if the smart contract, if this program says that something should happen, but I distribute this over a lot of public nodes, how can I do it if the smart contract does something illegal? Like, yeah, there were some cases where smart contracts are programmed to do something illegal. And then the question is, whom do you attack? Who is responsible for this illegal smart contract? This is still a not solved problem and will have to be discussed over the coming years. I stop here to leave time for Michael, and then I hope you also have some questions from the audience later.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Linus. So on this one, it was supposed to be Frédéric Sans, but because at my Swiss Keeper, we are very agile and we try to find solutions. So Luc Béhard, sales director, will take this one over to start to talk about smart contract with UEFA, and then Michael Vergoz, our CTO, will discuss digital identities on a European level. So the floor is yours. Thank you for the last minute.
Thank you, Christelle. So it's always a pleasure to jump between subjects. And maybe one of the subjects I thought when we had the news of Frédéric not being able to share some of his experience on smart contract is one subject that actually I covered and I had a few years ago. So back in 2017, the UEFA had an issue. Actually, like most of the event organizer, being concert, being a sports event, they have big problem around the black and the gray market. And for all of the ticket of the sales. And UEFA had that problem for the Champions League final, the European League final, or simply for the Euros. And the same actually issues were in the hand of the FIFA, of the IOC in sports, or in big concerts for Adele or for any big stars or for those. And what they developed was actually with the blockchain and with smart contract in the beginning private, and then it moved to a more public one. They developed a solution actually to trace the whole life cycle of the tickets from the moment it was bought to the moment of the event. Because in those cases with the gray and the black market, it used to be that it passed in the hands of many good people, but unfortunately many bad people. And what they view is actually they could trace with a blockchain and with a smart contract, with an application, the life cycle until the end of the tickets. And it allowed them also to take some strategic action where, for example, they would graphically see that they were on one person, one number, one phone number or whatever, a concentration of ticket happening. And I saw that physically, that suddenly in the hand of one person, there were more than 150 tickets. So that raised the question in order to protect the real fan and the people that should participate to those events and see those events, to block those users and to have an action, and through the blockchain and through those smart contract, they would see that. So concretely, that's already quite a many years ago. Through smart contract, they were able to manage those, and that's a typical usage of smart contract in businesses, for example. And with that, let me introduce Michael Vergoz, our CTO, that will share with you this implication more on the identity point of view.
Thank you very much. Look, it's a pleasure for me to be here. Well, we've this very interesting presentation before. I will try to talk a bit about the blockchain on our continent, but at the state level, knowing that AI is already widely used, and raise more privacy concerns on than technical one. Then in fact we can even say that the issue with AI is mostly legal, while the issue with the blockchain related to more international diplomacy and mutual recognition between states, whether in the legal, the private, or public spheres. Well, in Europe, there are several notable examples of blockchain usage, particularly in Estonia, where the government has pushed the boundaries to applying it's across various sectors, from identity management, but also healthcare. And Estonia system is based on a blockchain technology called KSI, which has been developed in 19th. And from the perspective of identity, title insurance, signature verification between parties, blockchains clearly provide significant advantages. However, these aspects alone haven't driven the widespread adoption of blockchain. What has truly made blockchain more mainstream is first and more foremost its application in finance. We all know this famous Bitcoin, often referred as a currency, but largely usable as a proof of reserve. We also know Ethereum, which enables the financial management contract between multiple parties. It manages deposits, funds, warranties, options, and so on. Yet, I'm not entirely convinced that blockchain is absolutely necessary in every context. Once I can trust an entrepreneur, Linus explained a bit about that before, but once I can trust an entrepreneur, I can also trust what derives from it. And this is the concept behind the root certificate, working without the blockchain, and the Genesis block in Bitcoin or Ethereum. From this root, you can derive a formal mathematical proof, which is sufficient to verify almost everything. So while the blockchain is indeed a remarkable tool, it also has its downside, and one of the main concerns is the resources consumption, both in terms of hardware but also in energy. And the privacy is another issue, as it can offer benefits, but it also poses some challenges for users. Bitcoin, for example, consumes a large amount of energy, and yet is not private as some might believe. And yep.
You need to sum up on this one.
No, it's okay. Yeah, it's okay. We
just to wrap up, if you want to conclude.
Yeah, so I hope one day that my Swiss digital identity can be recognized by a third country without needing validation from a central system. And this is a hot topic for the ETSI, which has started to discuss about the blockchain, and could be just to be useful for, but essential for identity 2.0, let's say.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Michael. Then we arrive to the last theme of this session, AI for secure data management. So AI is another creature, if I may say. So Linus, again, we'll talk about AI and machine learning techniques. Before we go through the details of this very exciting project, and I cannot wait to hear about you, Romain. But first, let's leave the floor to Linus.
Okay, thank you very much. Yeah, and as also Michael said, with regard to blockchains and the restrictions, so the energy part, just to open a small parenthesis there, it also depends a lot on the blockchain. So some blockchains are very energy heavy, while others are in fact very light and do not consume as much power. Anyway, okay, just closing the parenthesis. So AI and machine learning techniques, as I said before, AI, you can mostly think of it as something where you train your model and then you use it. And some things you can do with these models once you have trained them, you can use them in data management to automate collection, analysis, and manage your data. Always have to take care that the data you're analyzing with your AI must actually be data that the AI model already saw. Else, of course, this will not work and the AI will just try to separate your data in meaningless categories, which would not be the best case. For secure data management, what you can do, some things you can do with ML techniques is, for example, threat detection and risk management. So threat detection can be for emails, can be also for the network, so looking what packages come in, and then directly look at the packages which are correct or not. It can also be up to some point if for callers or for requests to your service, and you can say, okay, these requests, they are risky, and these other requests, they're not risky. So this is something which is not new, which has been done for ages already. And what is new now is that with these LLMs, it gets more and more easy to do this threat detection and risk management. It is really very simple nowadays to ask these LLMs to help you in doing this risk management with more or less success. From the legal point of view, some things I think is very important is what is if these models are wrong. So I come back to this also later with regard to model explainability. These models, they are just statistical models, so they don't have any real reasoning capabilities so far. So they just say, I learned this thing, and from what I learned, statistically speaking, it should be like that. Of course, if the learning has been biased, so if for some reason in some country mostly black people go to jail, and the model learns that mostly black people go to jail, even though white people would do as many bad things as the black people, the model learns black people should be in jail. So if you ask it for somebody, should this person go to jail or not? The model will just say, it's a black person, yes, it should go to jail. So this is a big bias that has been introduced in the model. And now the same bias comes over through the model, and some people might be tempted to just hide behind the model and say, the model said so. And this is a big problem. Bias in machine learning is a really big problem. Same thing with regard to copyrighted information. So information either from books, from programmers, from painters, from other places, which might be included in these models. What do you do with them? So there are big legal questions which are not solved yet, and which the courts probably will have to take up on. So just very quickly for some AI and machine learning techniques that that can be used for this thing.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Linus. Okay, so Romain, finally it's your turn. So can you please talk about Amplify's project together with Inno3? Because I'm very keen to hear more about this one. It's to offer ads fully generated by AA. So I'm sure the audience as well is very interested and curious to hear what you have to say.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Crystal. So I will first talk about a day-to-day experience with AI and all these two systems, because in fact our system exists, Amplify system exists from 4 to 5 years ago, and we've implemented the first version of AI 2 years ago, so it's pretty new. And we faces a lot of challenges, and I will talk about my experience around that. So if I think as an experience as developer, a few years ago, it was extremely difficult, for example, just a little example, to be able to extract just a phone number from text. It is possible. It was possible using tools like regular expressions and so on, but it's something that takes time and is not very reliable. Then we had the new tools coming, the LLMs 2 years ago, available for everyone to use. And we have seen that thanks to, among other things, the massive processing capabilities of those systems are very efficient for classification. They can identify and sort sensitive data from non-sensitive data. They can automatically extract, for example, extract and remove credit card numbers, addresses, names, phone numbers, and so on. So we can use models to separate sensitive data from non-sensitive data, or even to help us to be able to fill the form. For Amplify, for example, it was pretty difficult to have just a form and be sure that everyone fills it correctly. Even if we do some input checked on every input of the form, someone will always put their phone number in the remark field or something like that. So we have to deal with that. And with the AI, it was pretty nice to have a tool that can extract all this information from us. We can also do anomaly detection. I'm sure that you have all tried to deal with ChatGPT, and at a moment you have seen a pop-up saying, "Oh no, I cannot answer this. This is not. You cannot generate this image, or you cannot generate this text. This is harmful. I don't want to do." This is because, in fact, we have to implement tools to be able to safeguard the anomalies inside the content. We have to detect the inappropriate behavior of the users or in the data to prevent fraud or unwanted manipulation. In fact, we don't want someone to extract, for example, the corpus of our models and so on. So we have tools to be able to determine for us if it is possible or not to use something. And also, we wanted to use automated decision making. In fact, AI isn't only linear responses. For example, in ChatGPT or other tools like that, you can ask something, and if the model doesn't have the response, it can sometimes hallucinate. This is not this is not what we want, but it can also ask for tools to run behind to be able to gather information elsewhere, for example, over the internet, or connect to a system to retrieve some data. So this is what we call automated decision making. The system itself decides to connect to something else to get information or to change something on its own. But it's pretty risky. We can see that we cannot let it do what he wants to do every time, but it can be applied to recommendation systems or risk management tools. So now I want to give you a few words about our project Addition. Christelle, okay. So the existing part of Amplify, the blue rectangles you see here. In fact, we generate ads with OpenAI for the moment, but we generate ads, or the clients can input the ads manually. And then there is a user in the loop, human in the loop. There is someone who validates the ad, and then the ad is published on the platforms, Facebook, Google, and so on. Then we gather statistics about the ad, and voila, the ad is running. You get your statistics. You have maybe a landing page if you don't have one. But we had an idea for a new project where the AI can help us to create the perfect ad by taking decision for us, by optimizing itself in a feedback loop. For example, here in the green rectangles, you have the image generation. We will use open source LLMs, but we have also a part of copyrighted and private data detection on the validation part. Then with content labeling and signing. It's very important for our users to be able to prove that the images generated are done or not with a generation tool. We have to add traceability for the ad and so on. Then the GenAI gathers the statistics, then takes all the internal data and contextual cues to generate a new version of the ad. The idea here is to do this loop multiple times a day, every time this is necessary, to generate a better ad, in fact. Gathering external and internal data, transforming the ad into information. This is what we like to say. We want to transform the ad into information to have the best contextual ad possible without using private data. In fact, we can gather, I don't know, geographic informations, meteo, weather information, and so on, but not your name, your address, and so on. This is for the Illustrious project. The addition project is something that we do in partnership with EPFL and ICOSIS in Freiburg. But there are some, yes, you can.
Sorry.
But there are some limitations, in fact. Like Linus said before, to train model, we need a large amount of data. And there is a risk that some kind of private data are taken by in the corpus to train models. There are, like I said before, there are tools to separate this data, but also there are people that tries to hide information and modify the information to train the models. Maybe sometimes to have a backdoor inside the system to be able to access it or to change the behavior of the model with a magical keyword or something like that. And this can be a risk for private data. So you have control tools to protect sensitive information, but it's pretty easy for someone to just slightly modify data to hide it or to do something not very good. Then you have the ethical considerations, like Linus say about the thing that if you say to the system that only black people are doing crimes, he will put every black people in jail. This is not very good. Same thing for visual detection of faces. If you have a system that allows you to enter a building and it is only trained on white people, it will discriminate all the black people who try to enter the building. You have also the manipulation of information, deepfakes, and so on. And for this, in our particular case, at Amplify, we have a challenge. The challenge is, for example, to do not allow someone who wants to sell false items, like I don't know, glasses, counterfeit glasses. We don't want them to be able to use our system to do the perfect ad to advertise something that is not legal. So we have to do to put a lot of firewalls to avoid something like that happens. But sometimes,
yes. I'm sorry, 5 minutes left if we want to have some time for 1 or 2 questions. I let you write it up and
yes, I just finished with the last. I will just give the hand to Linus about the black box effect of the models.
1 minute, Linus.
So yeah, it's what Roman said. The problem with the system is sometimes you don't know why they decide like that or like that. And so in a medical environment, it could be, should I amputate the leg or not? And the model says yes, but why? Is it really true that I should amputate the leg? Same thing for autonomous vehicles. And yeah, as I said before, there's always bias in these systems, either financial or legal. And it's very important to test these models. And of course, we as humans also have bias. But if we apply these models to a lot of data, to a lot of situations, and they have bias, then we have bias in a lot of situations, and this is really bad. So really need to be careful with that thing.
Perfect. Thank you very much. So I think we have one question here.
Yes. So I'm taking over here first on the question that came up into the Q&As, and thank you for all of the speakers today. And a question that came from Mariam around these football match tickets. And there were two questions. One that was around the smart contract interact with the IP rights related to other providers around the broadcasting, the merchandising, the sales, and the artist. If the smart contract can be used for that, it could theoretically, but because of the IP rights and the segregation of rights of access of the data, that was never used. And as far as it is not used as a system to extend around the tickets. The second question is more interesting, and that really happened, was everything which was in case of force majeure, in unforeseen circumstances, cancellation or something like this, if this can be used in terms of reaction, etc. And actually that happened 2 years ago, I think, in the Champions League final in Paris. There have been in one part of the stadium some attack from local nice guys that try to go through the gates and block the gates at one point of times. And because the UEFA and the system knew exactly the ticket holder and not the ticket purchaser at that time, meaning that they know who should have been entered and go through those gates, they were able to inform them with a quick instant system messaging that they should not go through gate 15 that was blocked by the police and those events, but they should go to another gate. So yes, it could occur on a crisis mode, being directly implemented and used.
Any other questions?
So far in the chat, no, but I think we had one that came on your end, yes.
Yes, so maybe for Philippe, what specific types of data are best suited for blockchain storage in legal practices, and how does this enhance security compared to traditional methods?
Okay, that's not an easy question.
In 1 minute?
Even more so. No, I think for legal professions, of course, the protection, I would say, of legal professional secrecy is absolutely key. And in fact, we face a liability, even a criminal liability, if we do not protect adequately the data of our clients in the same way that a bank would face a liability in the event of a breach of the Swiss bank secrecy rules. And that's why it is absolutely key for all the legal professions, like attorneys who are subject to this professional requirement, to choose extremely carefully any external storage solution which they can put in place. And one thing which is very important to keep in mind in this context is that, of course, by using an external solution, you lose, I would say, a little bit of control over the data, but it does not mean that necessarily the level of security would decrease. You could even argue otherwise, because if you use a highly secure external storage environment, which of course has a scale effect because it can invest in security, because it can basically replicate these costs on a number of different clients, you could even end up in a scenario where you increase the level of security as opposed to keeping all the data, I would say, in your own premises. And there in the legal profession, I can really see, I would say, a change in minds over the last, I would say, years. If you had said 5-10 years ago to a lawyer, you could store some of your client data outside of your own server within your premises, everyone would have said that this is a crazy thought. Nowadays, I think when we see with the emergence of a lot of cyber attacks and other, I would say, data-related risks, also for the legal profession, because of course we host very sensitive data, the concept of relying on a partner which has an extremely secure storage environment and which can offer a higher level of security sometimes than what you can have in-house is no longer a crazy thought and might even become a standard practice going forward.
Perfect. Thank you, Philippe. So we are my Swiss keeper, but we are also timekeepers. So I will conclude on this a few words. Thank you so much to all our panelists, very much from the bottom of our hearts for sharing your visions today. A big thank you to everyone in the audience for your participation and taking the time and your great questions. So if you want to listen to the podcast again, it will be posted on our LinkedIn page and our webpage. So do not hesitate to have a look and to follow us. And I hope you had a great time with us today. Today, I think this afternoon, you will receive a survey to help us improve and maybe get more content for future webinars. So thank you again for joining us. Stay safe and have a great day. Thank you very much. Bye-bye, all of you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.